Hello everyone, and welcome to the attack of the Amiga clones. In this series, we'll be going through some of the loving homages to arcade games, some of which were officially released as cover disc games. Some of them were just plain public domain. The first of these is going to be comparing Mr. Do, the arcade original, with the Amiga clone Bob's Garden. So let's talk a little bit about the original first. The original Mr. Do arcade game was released by Universal. Universal was a Japanese outfit that released tons and tons of arcade games, though most are not well remembered these days. They were actually active from 1977 all the way up until the mid 80s, around 1985, I believe, was their last release of note. They're probably most known for the Mr. Do series, Mr. Do, Mr. Do's Castle, Mr. Do's Wild Ride, and Do Run Run, although they are credited with creating the first ever platform game, Space Panic. A lot of people consider that to be the very first platform video game. They were contracted out, the home licenses were contracted out to Coleco for their ColecoVision system. Lots of people remember the Universal games under the Coleco moniker, but it's actually an interesting fact that Coleco in turn sold that license, or farmed those licenses out to the other competing platforms of the day, including Atari. So you have Mr. Do by Universal, programmed by Coleco programmers for the Atari 2600. It probably does not take a genius to realize that the 2600 versions are inferior to the ColecoVision versions. But anyway, there was no license involved for Bob's Garden, which is why we're here on Attack of the Clones. So let's take a look at the original version of Mr. Do for the arcade. All right, nice, big, bright, colorful screen. And let's fire it up, shall we? So in Mr. Do, our goal is to collect as much fruit as we can while destroying our enemies. A lot of people think this is a Dig Dug ripoff, but it's really a much deeper game than Dig Dug because of all of the different ways you can play it. There's multiple ways to clear a level. You can either destroy all the enemies, you can, or you can collect all the fruit. In the meantime, you're being chased, like I said, by all these baddies. And you have the opportunity to earn letters, which will give you an extra life. So we're going to complete this first level real quick. Now, if you look at the level layout, it took me forever to realize that, see this, your tunnel, your sort of default tunnel is a number, the number of the level that you're on. I did not realize that until earlier this year, and I've been playing Mr. Do for, 30 years, so just goes to show there's always something new to discover. There are tons of strategies about dropping the apple. That was probably one of the best ways you can probably do it. Of course, firing the ball is an integral part of the game. The ball travels throughout the hotels. Here's our 3. And again, you're only collecting cherries. Unlike the later games where you have different types of fruit, in Mr. Do it's nothing but cherries. So anyway, the game progresses, it gets more and more difficult until you finally are overcome by the forces of the monster. When you collect this, when you collect the center thing, that's what makes the letter monsters come down. We'll try and activate that just so you can see that one more time. Might go ahead and just, oh boy. Well, that's alright. So that is Mr. Do for the arcade. Now let's take a look at Bob's Garden. Oh, let's put in our name here. Nice high score screen with a separate soundtrack. Universal games are always known for their great music. All right, let's talk about Bob's Garden. So Bob's Garden was released in 1993. It was a cover disc game on Amiga Power. That's how a lot of these clones made their way out. The magazines had no qualms about paying for loving homages to arcade games to stick on their discs. There was probably some wiggle room in terms of the copyright law when you did something like that. This was written in assembly language, ASM. It's programmed by Justin Leck. Justin Leck, also known for Dungeons, Amethysts, Alchemists, and Everything, which is a text adventure. He did a shoot 'em up called Killing Machine, and then a soccer game called League Challenge. So Justin had he kind of has a little bit of experience in everything. Sounds like a well-qualified guy to do this game. Like I said, this was released in 1993, 1 or 2 players, and has one review from the One Amiga, which another maybe this appeared on multiple cover discs. Now it received a 10 out of 10 in the August 1994 edition. So the game was reviewed well. Let's check it out. All right, so here we are with Bob's Garden. You know what would be great with Bob's Garden? If we displayed the art for Bob's Garden. So we got a high score screen here. It looks pretty good. Oh man, we've just crashed. Let's try again. Let's see if we can make it not crash this time. You know, I think part of the problem was that I selected the wrong kickstart ROM. Let's try it with the 1200 and see if we do better. All right, so we got the cast here. Nice title screen. Bob, he looks like a cool dude. He looks a lot like me. And let's kick it off here. So this sounds like a Paula-infused version of the Mr. Do theme. We have our ball still intact. I gotta say, the animation is very smooth. Bob is very well animated. Look at all those different frames of animation as he moves his arms and his legs. I'm on the lookout for little things like that. As I said before, there's a whole strategy of how you can maneuver the apples to get the highest score possible. Oh boy, I'm in trouble now. Not my best life there. But I really like the way that they've redrawn the monsters. Now they look kind of like penguins. It looks super cute. I think that's really cool. So every once in a while, the extra life monster will come out, but you can always get the prize in the middle to activate the extra life monster and his cadre to come out. And again, it keeps that same numbering in your tunnel, so you do that spell out too. This is presented in a even more widescreen. You know, the original game, Mr. Do, is a vertically oriented game, and this one is, of course, the Amiga did not really support a lot of Tate mode, and so there's nothing wrong with changing the aspect ratio, in my opinion. You've still got the scene numbers. Universal games are famous for saying scene instead of level. The music seems a little bit slower. I probably would have liked to have that a little bit faster. And I'm sure this was originally a PAL release, and the enemies are, they're just as fast as they should be. So the monsters do transform, and still haven't seen their ability to kind of break through the tunnels, which in the original Mr. Do they definitely can once they transform. Let me try this one more time. That was one of the worst games I've ever played, Mr. Do, but we do have a nice high score screen here. Even gives you the opportunity. I wonder, you cannot use the keyboard to enter your name, but that's okay. In the original Mr. Do, you only got the initial entry. It says wiggle joystick for options. Let's check out the options. So 1 or 2 players, sound, number of bobs you can change, and difficulties normal, hard, and easy. So lots more options here. This is really kind of the best of both worlds, as you get all the Mr. Do action you want, plus tons of options, difficulty options that are not found in the original game unless you, monkey around with the dip switches or whatever. So I've got to say, this seems to be about as good as it gets in terms of clones on the Amiga. Like I said, the controls are very, very good. It's probably should have fired my ball a little bit quicker there. But I would have been very happy with this if I was, even if you're not familiar with the arcade game. Now I will say it seems like it's a little bit more difficult to turn and fire in this game than the original. I'm gonna try and get some of the extra life things here. But the diagonal gradient patterns on the levels are not distracting. You've got plenty of big, bright colors. It's my main complaint with some of the 8-bit versions of the game is that the colors are a little bit washed out, especially like in the Atari 8-bit version. So I'm glad to see the Amiga version really takes advantage of all that. So anyway, Bob's Garden, a solid port of Mr. Do. I highly recommend you check it out, even if you're not a fan of Mr. Do. You might turn the corner and become one. So thank you for watching the inaugural episode of Attack of the Clones. We'll be back with more Amiga clones next time. If you want to check out what we got going on over at Patreon, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We do a weekly wacky Amiga podcast, which we cover a different game every week. We're going 8 years running now, so we hope you check us out, and we'll see you next time. Adios.